Well, despite saying he's under a gag order, Donald Trump did have a lot to say today, and he's heading back on the U.S. presidential campaign trail as a convicted felon. A New York jury found the former president guilty on all 34 charges related to falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, it's unclear just how this will affect his re-election bid. Whether the conviction actually helps or hurts continues to be unclear, but he is enjoying a lead in several swing states. So how will this affect the political calculation on this side of the border? Well, earlier today, I spoke with former Canadian ambassador to the United States, Frank McKenna. Ambassador McKenna, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome back to Power Play.
Thank you.
I was in Philadelphia covering the Prime Minister and the Canadian delegation earlier this month, and Ambassador Kirsten Hillman told reporters, Mr. Trump doesn't worry us. After what happened yesterday, should Mr. Trump worry Canada?
Well, yeah, I think for sure. You can make an argument that President Biden's been a very protectionist president in the interest of moral equivalency. But with Trump, it's not only the protectionism, but also the unpredictability and his wholesale assault in his previous administration on global institutions. So I would think we would have good reason to be concerned. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be respectful. The United States picks their president, we don't. But should we be concerned? Of course we should.
Yeah, to that end, the Canadian government has been very quiet on the verdict. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly saying that Canada will work with whoever leads the United States after the fall's election. Do you think our government should be more outspoken about it, though?
No, not at all. I think Minister Joly is just dead on the money. She's got the right tone. The Americans bitterly resent Canada and or anybody else being patronizing about their political situation. And I think that we would be smart to just keep our head down and stay out of the way. In fact, I think that's true for us, generally speaking, around the world. Other countries do not want to hear from Canada on moral issues or political opinions. So I think the government of Canada has a just absolutely perfect. In fact, I was quite shocked, and I guess probably if I was an American, a little alarmed when the Russians weighed in on the verdict yesterday and said they thought it was terrible and that it's clear that Biden is trying to influence the results of the election using the judicial system. I think if I had Putin as a friend in my corner, I'd be a little bit concerned.
What do you think that says about the political dynamic in the United States and what shadow that might cast on their election going forward?
Well, I think that Putin and Russia are just being mischievous. That's not surprising. But let's speak to the verdict itself. I was a little surprised, having done that kind of work for much of my life. I've always found juries to be eminently reasonable, but they do like compromise. And for them to come back so quickly and with such unanimity with 34 different counts, I think speaks to just how strongly they felt after hearing and seeing the evidence. If I were in Trump's corner, I'd be a little concerned about that, especially with other cases possibly coming before juries. In terms of the consequences for the election, Mike, which is the important thing, this will have minor influence, not major. One poll that was done before the verdict indicated that if Trump were to win, it would actually give him a big lift. If he were to lose, he would lose a small bit of popular support. And I think polling that's been done since the verdict show only at the margins does this influence voter intentions. But those margins are extraordinarily important. I just have to remind people of that. Independents, who represent a small but influential part of the voting public, by a margin of 2-1, believe that he was guilty of the offense and that the jury was right. And I, again, would remind people that the last election, even though Biden led by 7 million votes in terms of popular votes, in the all-important Electoral College, about 45,000 votes scattered over 3 or 4 states would have changed the results. So if you can get a sliver of independents to change their mind as a result of a verdict like that, that's quite important, quite significant.
Yeah, and that poll that you're mentioning from the Marquette Law School, just to give viewers a bit more of an idea on it, found that if Trump was found guilty, it would be 43% of the population voting for Biden, 39% for Trump. If he's found not guilty, well, that flipped to 44-38 in favor of Trump. To that end, Ambassador, I wanted to ask you, do you think that we would even still be having this conversation if the candidate was not Biden? Do you think that it would be a different calculation?
Well, it's an interesting hypothetical. I think the debate would be different because Biden's age is certainly a fairly significant issue for some voters. But my experience, especially watching U.S. politics, is that whatever candidate you produce, the attack machine will find something. Remember, these elections are fueled by billions of dollars of money. Some individuals put as much as $100 million in themselves, and it's all directed in half a dozen states. And so it can move the yardsticks. John Kerry's a case in point. John Kerry was a decorated war hero, one of the most respected people in the United States. And when he became the candidate, the attack machine turned him into a sniveling coward. And that's the power that you can bring if you put billions of dollars against a particular candidate. So if it wasn't Biden, somebody else would be smeared very badly, I can assure you. At the end of the day, Republicans in large measure will vote Republican, and the election will be decided by a small group of kind of swing voters or independent voters somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of key in on that sort of swing voters and really the motivation, because from what we saw yesterday with the verdict, that could affect people to either stay home and not vote at all. But could this possibly do for Democratic votes or people who might be leaning Democratic to actually get up off their couch and vote for Biden instead of staying home?
Well, I think it energizes both sides, probably Republicans more than Democrats. Because Trump has been masterful, even before 2016, in saying that if he lost the election it was because of cheating. Then in 2020, he made the case that the only way he could lose is if somebody cheated, and he's made that case ever since. And now he's saying the only way he could be convicted is if the judicial system was rigged. He's masterful at that, and quite frankly, he's been able to convince Republican voters of that as well. The victim card has worked extraordinarily well for him. He's a billionaire victim in everything that he does, and he's really used it well. If I were Democrats, quite frankly, it's gratuitous advice, I would change my strategy quite a bit. And I would make the argument that people like Trump won't be convicted because they have too much money and too much power. And even though he was convicted by this jury, he'll keep appealing using his expensive lawyers until he finally gets off. He'll get the judges that he appointed, and he'll get off. Chumps like you and I, we always end up paying the price, but people like Trump and his billionaire friends, they will always be able to get away because they've got more power and influence in the system, and that we're the victims. If you see where I'm going, I guess I'm trying to say that the American public have to make the Democratic American public need to make themselves victims here rather than allowing Trump always to claim that mantle, which he has done very effectively.
Just before letting you go, I wanted to bring it back to domestic politics here, related to the United States as well. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau back in January announced this Team Canada approach to re-engaging with American lawmakers ahead of the fall vote in the U.S. How do you think that's going so far?
Oh, I think they're working very hard at it. Look, people shouldn't mistake lack of noise for lack of action. I'm aware of the Government of Canada efforts across a number of ministries. They're working very hard at it, but not just the Government of Canada. I'm aware of provincial governments that have war rooms set up, and I would say civil society is starting to engage, and I think we're starting to see premiers coming together with federal people on all sides of the aisle. Truthfully, I think the public should have some sense of confidence that their elected people of all political persuasions are going to work together on this.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Former Canadian Ambassador to the United States, Frank McKenna, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate this.
Well, thank you for having me.